So we're going to continue from last time. And before we go on to the next item, there's actually two things I wanted to share, which one was sort of accidental, but I think maybe a good demonstration of how I think we could start to live. And the way the last podcast ended is I was going to continue on with the choose discomfort, which is, I so love this one. It's arguably I think this is why I saved it for last. So I think it's just one of the coolest ones. And I choose discomfort every day. And I strongly encourage all of you to do this. Good discomfort, though. Discomfort that is making you better, not necessarily discomfort that's making you worse. Oops, kind of accidentally misshared here. Yeah, so choosing discomfort that's going to make you better. And we'll get into the deeper details of that later. What I did, actually, by not continuing on with the discomfort is I was actually following my rule here, which is I was avoid racing to the end, literally, because I really want to talk about that one, but I didn't allow myself to. And instead, I think I mentioned that I was a little low on exercise, and then so I went and I did some exercise. And I think that this is what happens when you start to make this habit a habit. This quality, characteristic, a habit, is you just start to sort of do this subconsciously. And I really do think that when you're really kind of living in the moment, you're not distracted by plans that you have tomorrow night or friends that you're going to meet up with this weekend, getting off of work, where the kids are, where your dog is, what your partner is doing, all those things, which again, I think all those things are great things to pay attention to. But if they become so distracting, I think it can be very hard to live right now in the moment that you're actually living in. And when you're not living in this moment, I think that there's like a Yoda quote on this. I think I'm probably going to get this wrong because I wasn't planning on quoting Yoda. This is Yoda from Star Wars. And he's talking, I think, to Obi-Wan Kenobi, maybe. And he's talking about how he doesn't want to train Luke Skywalker because he's always about the future, always about being done, or always about what's been done, but never now, never what's going on right now in this moment. And I think that there's a lot to be said with this being present. And I will definitely say that the people I tend to find the most interesting are the ones that are present, that they allow themselves the ability to focus on what is happening right now. And I get it, right? We have deadlines, we have things going on in our lives. And sometimes, obviously, like if you have something really, a major life event, it's okay, right? I'm not saying if there's like a major family thing that you really need to be paying attention to, that you don't pay attention to those things, just to be clear. Like, I think that if those types of things occur, you definitely should. But what I mean here is that if that becomes your habit, that every day you find yourself drifting into somewhere else you want to be, wishing the day was over, wishing that you were done studying mathematics, or wishing you were an expert programmer, wishing that you had mastered typing in Dvorak, wishing that your podcast was done. I think that you're often selling yourself short because you're never showing yourself what you're really capable of, because you're never fully present for things that are happening. It's always, let's just get this done. And I think that also, it becomes contagious, this type of urgency. There was a meeting we were having with a very high level person from a fairly well established company a few months back, and the vibe that we got from this person was they really kind of didn't want to be there. They wanted us to sort of get to the point. What's the point? Just get to the point. And while I appreciate getting to the point as much as the next person, I think that without the right context, without the right story, without the right parameters, there is no point. Like, if you think of any great movie that you've seen, there tends to be some sort of climactic event that happens. But it's not the climactic event in and of itself that's so profound. It's oftentimes the context that surrounds that event. It's the buildup to that event. It's the challenges that were overcome to reach that climax that makes the climax so profound. And so if you just rush to the end where you have the climax, this person dies at the end, or these two people fall in love and are together, but you never give yourself time to nourish that story, I think it's pretty boring. I think it's maybe lost a lot of its meaning. And I think the same is sort of true if you go through life like this, that if all you're trying to do is just finish, I don't really know that you really experience things. And in fact, when I think about science and research and programming, I think that the people that end up being the best coders that I know, the best researchers, the best engineers, architects, thought leaders, they're the ones who linger. They allow themselves to really be deeply in the thing, long past the amount of time that it should warrant being in that thing. Because I think that they really care. They really want to have a deep understanding of things. They want to really grok what they're doing. And they're not satisfied with just having a degree or a certificate or, I don't know, something. And on top of that, like, if you really think about it, if you think about life as just a series of events, and all you're trying to do is just be done with this event so you can get to the next event, what's the point? Like, seriously, what actually is the point? If life is just a series of tasks that you're going to complete one after another, and all you're doing is just trying to get done with one task so you can get to the next task, so then you can be done with that task, so you can start working on the next task, so you can be done with that task, what's the point? Like, why? just so you can say on your deathbed, I got 907 tasks done in my lifetime. I'm so amazing. It just seems a bit worthless to me. And again, I'm not trying to say that this is my views, my philosophy on this is something everyone should prescribe to. But at least for me personally, and again, I'm a fairly ambitious person that is very goal oriented, and I think that I'm not lacking on things that I've been able to accomplish that I've set my mind to. But along the way, one of the things that really kind of changed me is I started to not try to be done with things. As we were talking about in one of the former podcasts, that I found that when I was doing things purely so I could be finished, I was finding that I would go into these massive bouts of depression because what next? And now I'm actually striving for not being finished with things. In fact, a little aside that I'll share with all of you is we at Merly, we've done a few different rounds of funding, and we did sort of our angels only, we did our pre-seed and our seed round. And each of those have been a different set of challenges. None of those have been necessarily easy breezy, although admittedly, maybe it's becoming easier now. Maybe we're finding our groove. And also, I don't necessarily like that. Like, I really like the challenge of it. But when we were getting through this last round, I remember talking with some of the leaders saying, I'm almost sad that we're done with this last round, because there's a really good chance I'll never experience the challenges that we experienced in this last seed round ever again. Because this was the first time that I had run a VC-backed company where I hadn't done this before. I didn't have all this experience. This is all new to me. And I was achieving something that had some degree of novelty to it, since that was like maybe our first priced round. And I remember one of my co-founders was asking, but it was so hard, right? Like, it was, aren't you so glad that you're through it? That we're through it? And I think my response was something like, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely happy that we're through this adversity, but no matter what happens now in life, I'll never be able to experience that thing again. Even if I do another startup, like my plan is to just stay with Merly for forever. But let's say that it doesn't go that way and Merly gets acquired or something, and then I want to do another startup. It's going to be different because now I have run a company through seed round, and I know more venture capitalists. And so there's probably more trust. It's like the difference between me publishing a research paper today, when I've been doing this for 15 years, versus me publishing a research paper that was my first paper back in 2007 or something. The stakes are different. The atmosphere is different. And there's something very special, I think, about these novel struggles in life that I think if you focus so much on getting through it, you can miss out on the beauty of just how amazing that experience really was. That there were these big moments of doubt or new experiences that you've never seen, or different team dynamics, or just curveballs that you've never experienced. There's just a wide range of dynamics that you haven't seen. And it's in some ways surprising. And I personally think that that's actually like one of the best parts of life is the surprising aspects, the the parts where we don't know what is going to come next. I think at one point I was, obviously I love video games. And at one point I think I was talking to T about how I almost wish I could play Elden Ring again and beat it again for the first time, because it was such a phenomenal experience. And so I guess what I'm trying to say with this, revisiting this avoid racing to the end, is on top of the fact that I think you shortchange yourself by not allowing yourself to really experience life and be able to grow in these novel ways that if you're just trying to power through things, you're going to miss, is that you also may sort of lose a deeper level of respect of how amazing these novel things actually can be. Like there's I think too much in the world today where people will often feel insecure or uncertain if they say, "Oh, I've never done this before. This is my first time skydiving. This is my first time scuba diving. This is my first time uh, skateboarding." And there's like this embarrassment or feeling of inferiority of it being the first time. And the older I get and the more I experience life, the more I think I lean into how amazing it is to be in these experiences that are one-offs, that are the first time, and how exciting that can be. And not wanting to rush through those. In fact, one of the things that I do when I play video games is I go out of my way to not beat the video game. I literally will do all the stuff that I can tell the devs kind of don't want me to do, just to drag it out, just to really explore, just to sort of do the lawn mowing as it is with the map. And for some people that I play these games with, I think they can find it really frustrating. Like my brother is very much let's work toward the goal. Let's work toward beating the game. And again, I respect that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do this. But at least for me personally, what I've found is when you don't become so focused on being done with something, it often gives you a deeper appreciation to just, how amazing that thing really can be. And it sort of changes the whole way you approach life. I love when I'm working in a programming language that I've never programmed in before. It's so exciting for me. I really like to lean in on those things. I'm not embarrassed by it at all. I'm not embarrassed at all that I've never written Rust code. I'm so excited by this fact because I know that it's only a matter of time before I have written Rust code, and then I won't be able to have that novel experience again. It'll be, oh, I know this already, and I've seen this before, and that that moment of novelty may be gone. Now, at the same time, just to swing the pendulum back the other way, I am very much a person that follows this philosophy of old is gold. That I'm not the kind of person that is so focused on new things that I have no appreciation for the things that I've had that are like my rocks, like my dog is right here, just chilling with me. Hey, buddy. Yeah, good boy. Good boy. Yeah, yeah. Maybe he'll make an appearance in one of these. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm patting on his belly. So he's been with me for, how long have you been with me, buddy? Maybe almost 10 years. And I hope he's with me for another 10 years. That would be fantastic. And I definitely am not losing my appreciation for those things that have been in my life for a very long period of time. If anything, I love having that stability. However, I think that it can be, dangerous to just want to race through life and get the grocery shopping done. Go finish this degree so you can get that degree, and finish writing this paper, or write that piece of code, or so on and so forth. And it's just a laundry list of checking off all these items, especially for the things that I think you should give yourself an opportunity to experience, like mastering programming. Like, I think if your goal is to master programming, that in itself might not be a great goal, because it becomes like too maybe outcome driven. And instead, maybe it's something like have a deep appreciation for all of the nuance of C#, or spend a large amount of time with some language where you can look at the various combinations and subtleties of the nuances of the language, how to combine things in novel ways to explore interesting and different behavior. Anyway, hopefully this is making some degree of sense. As most of the things that I talk about, I think this is very nuanced, and I understand that life is oftentimes this balancing act of trying to get things done, but then also growing. And I think it was Urs that had shared this Instagram video with me. And he was saying, this video, I think, is the epitome of you. And it was something about this guy that was saying, you have this high degree of confidence and comfort in who you are, that who you are is enough, and that you are very fulfilled in the person that you become and the things that you've accomplished. And so you have that as your foundation. Yet simultaneously, you have a yearning to grow, to be better, to constantly strive for more, not for the purpose of attaining more, but for the purpose of pushing your boundaries. So it's not like a material wealth thing where you're doing more because you want more money or something of that nature, but rather it's more about trying to accomplish something that maybe you've never done before. Yeah, something to that effect. Okay. So the next one that we have, again, we're not going to race to the end, even though I really want to talk about discomfort. We're instead going to talk about being quietly confident. And this one, I think, this one's actually quite interesting in that I think that there's a lot of confusion around confidence and arrogance. And there's this discussion about be confident, but don't be arrogant. And they're often seen as they feel very much the same. And yeah, I don't really think so. I think that it usually is, I think it's in some ways obvious when someone is, I think, arrogant versus when someone's confident. So I think what it really comes down to, at least in my mind, whenever someone is arrogant or has some amount of hubris or whatever the word is we want to use, it's almost always a form of insecurity, right? Like this is pretty much all narcissists. I think all narcissists, people that are, primarily about themselves, I think that ultimately they tend to be very insecure people. And that's why they want it to be about them, because they don't have enough confidence in themselves with who they are, what they've achieved, whatever. And so they will need to make the dialogue about themselves. They'll need to make sure people acknowledge all the things that they've done. And I think that it's pretty obvious when people do this, because they'll constantly put themselves in the center of attention about, oh, I've done all these things and I was so much better than this other person. It's usually pretty clear who the narcissists are, because they really want like a large degree of affirmation. Like that's one of the key things of narcissists is they need external validation. The whole thing about talking about themselves is they need other people to confirm that they are amazing, because ultimately they don't believe it. And that's why they're trying to convince you. So then you will reinforce them and then they'll feel like less insecure or something. And so arrogant people or narcissistic people or people with hubris, it's usually fairly obvious who they are. Anyway, the point I think I'm trying to get at is there can be times where substantiating with evidence why your views may be valid as not a bad thing, because you're not using it necessarily as something that you're trying to get praise on. You're using it as substantiation of why you have certain views. So for example, I might say, I haven't written any code in Rust, and therefore you shouldn't trust what I have to say about Rust because I don't know what I'm talking about. However, I understand programming language syntax pretty well, and so I can probably scan something and get a general sense of what it's kind of doing. Now, on the other hand, if I say, oh, in this language, I've written hundreds of thousands of lines of code, so I have far more familiarity, this again is not meant as hubris. This is meant to substantiate these views. And oftentimes I think this can be very helpful, especially when other people don't know. So it's like you're sharing these things as data. You're not sharing them so people can like worship you. And I think that may be part of the difference, is that those people that are quietly confident, they can share things that are data to help others understand where they are in their confidence level on a topic. Whereas other people that are like narcissists and are arrogant, they will often share things just so others can praise them. They're sharing not for an understanding of their expertise in something, which will help others have a stronger sense of that expertise. They're sharing so other people can simply just give them external confirmation, external, positive feedback, which will help them feel better about themselves. So anyway, I think that my life, what I've seen in my life is that the people that are really confident, they do have a sort of quietness about them. It's not to say that they can't get feisty and they won't necessarily raise their voice, but they don't need to announce all these things that maybe they've done, because they know that they've done these things. And there will be times where they will say, like, listen, you're disrespecting me and not listening to my view. I've done all these things. What have you done? And in that case, it's a substantiation thing. And I think that in some cases, that's fully warranted. I think that there's some merit to that, especially if you have an expert in the room and people are disregarding the expert's opinion. I think at that point, it can be fine to lean in and be like, hey, why are we getting this twisted? I'm the expert here. We should maybe listen to what I have to say. And hopefully, we don't devolve into ignoring the experts. So that never really needs to be said. Just respect the experts in the different areas. But those pieces aside, what I often find is that the people who really have done these like wildly incredible things tend to be the people who need to tell you about the wildly important things the least. They kind of just don't really care if anybody knows, because ultimately the person that does need to know is themselves. And that person knows. And also, I think that really is the true definition of confidence. People that I think really are confident, they have their own internal barometer, and they are, in some ways, their own compass. The only person that they really need to validate their existence is themselves. And so they can be quietly confident because they're their own judge. So yeah, I think that, and I teach this at the university, and this one I think is really important because for the students that I work with, there can be they already are sort of in a very strong position where people might already have some sort of jealousy or dislike of them purely for where they are academically to begin with, just as a student. And so I try to remind them that in almost everyone else's minds, they've already won. People are going to look at them and say, oh, well, you graduated from such and such, so you already are the super genius. And I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand, that this thing that we maybe could be seen as a good thing, oftentimes people might feel insecure about this, and then it becomes something that people dislike us for, rather than being happy for us. And for that reason, I think it's even more important for the people that have been able to achieve great things, that they go out of their way to downplay these things. Because in my own life, what I've seen is the more I've accomplished, the easier it is for people to dislike me, even if I'm the same person. Like, it just doesn't matter, because once you start to achieve, it's sort of like the person that's run one marathon versus the person that's run 100 marathons. Is the person that's run one marathon, I think can be easy for many of us to think like, yeah, good job. But then that person that's run 100 marathons, I think in our heads, it could be easy for us to be like, wow, like, why are you flexing on me? And that maybe that's not the person's thing at all. Maybe it's just they love running. But then it can be like this knee-jerk reaction of, okay, there's other people in the room. You got like some major main character syndrome kind of thing going on. And so as you achieve more in life and you become more pronounced with your success, I think it becomes even more important that you really become quietly confident. That it needs to have, like, it may be acceptable in your earlier parts of life where you haven't achieved that much for you to have a bit of a chip on your shoulder. But the further you get in life and the more that you achieve, I think, at least from what I've seen, the more it is paramount that you humble yourself, because people are going to likely scrutinize you even more. You're becoming more and more visible. And so you need to be more and more humble. You need to move through life with a lot more quiet confidence. And oftentimes, again, it can be very easy for people to not understand all the challenges that you've had, and not understand that, like, I don't know a single person that's achieved greatness that has been super easy. That I feel like everyone that I know, they've had their own struggles. And I think that's part of what makes life so great. But I think it can be very easy to vilify people that have achieved greatness. And so as we move more and more toward these things of greatness, it becomes more and more important that we are very quiet and confident.